Rupert Darwall joins us to discuss, as author of Green Tyranny, the admission from the net zero or Energy Security Minister Ed Miliband, who's admitted that heat pumps, which currently cost around 10 grand, that's just the actual heat pump, forget all the extra work involved, may never actually be cheaper than gas boilers, currently costing around 3 grand, despite Labour sneaking a boiler tax through Parliament. Rupert, I mean, this isn't a revelation to anyone paying attention, is it? Of course, these things are never going to be cheaper to buy or to install. There's also the small point, which doesn't like to mention, they don't actually work very well either, do they?
Well, particularly in Britain's ageing and drafty housing stock, that's absolutely right. I mean, fundamentally, electricity is a more expensive way to heat your home than burning natural gas. I mean, it's really as simple as that.
I mean, yeah, so, I mean, you and your silly facts. I mean, that'll never catch on. But as the Energy Secretary, he's confirmed that the government is not planning to introduce a future ban on gas boilers. That was something, by the way, the Tories were going to bring in, and then they sort of reneged a bit on it. But the Labour said they were going to go ahead with that, and the scheme was going to come in, which will come into force in April, means boiler manufacturers will be fined if they fail to sell enough heat pumps, similar to what's been going on in the electric car market. But they're not going to ban these gas boilers, and it's just going to be a requirement, I believe, for new builds to have heat pumps. But again, heat pumps work really well in some of the Nordic countries where they're the norm, where you've got a lot more space, fewer people, a lot more space. Houses are built with incredible insulation to cope with those incredibly cold, snowy winters, and the heat pumps work very well in those scenarios. But that's pretty much, you know, 1% of our housing stock, which is why they don't work here.
And the other thing is they have, when the temperature falls in the Nordic countries, the temperature just stays low for much longer. We have much more variable outside temperatures, which also makes life more difficult. But I think the thing I'm very, cynical about what Ed Miliband's saying.
Cynical about Ed Miliband? No.
Well, what they're going to do, Julia, is drive up the cost of natural gas. That's how they'll get people to switch. Because under the net zero plan, what you'll have is the government has carbon emissions allowances, and it reduces the number of those allowances, which drives up the price. So we're going to have vertiginously expensive natural gas.
So people will say, will it be cheaper for me to do it? That's what they've done that with fuel duty. People thought it was cheaper to get an electric car. And of course, as soon as then people move from diesel and petrol cars to electric cars, they then make sure that price goes up. But here's the thing, we've already got the highest electricity prices pretty much in the world. Domestically, for domestic use, electricity is 3 times the sort of the average in most countries. In terms of businesses, it's 5 times. What a surprise. People can't afford to run businesses and manufacture in this country. Certainly not, you know, the AI, the future that the Prime Minister seems to magically think we're going to have with those costs. So their solution to all of that is that we just make gas more expensive.
That's absolutely correct. And they also talk about energy efficiency. And how do they get energy efficiency? How do they make energy efficiency pay? It's by pushing up the cost of energy. So I think one has to be... The one thing that is for the birds was Ed Miliband's and Keir Starmer's pledge of cutting energy bills by £300 a year. That, as long as we remain on this court, on the net zero escalator, energy costs are just going to go up and up. And
again, you can't run a successful company. You can't grow 0.1% growth in GDP in the last quarter. I mean, oh, well done, everybody. We're not in recession. I mean, it's pathetic. But it's going to get worse before it gets better, certainly. I've always thought the Labour are going to end up dropping below these targets the way that as we got closer and closer, the Tories did. I'm not sure they're sensible enough to do that, which is a very, very big worry. And of course, we've had Kemi Badenoch saying that Tories have made errors on all of these things, but, you know, and things like net zero, but, you know, they didn't have a plan in place to reach those targets. But, of course, it's the target that's the problem, not everything else.
Yeah, I think Kemi Badenoch saying she's a net zero skeptic it doesn't really wash anymore. I mean, you basically have to say net zero was a mistake, and you have to say we need a new policy. We need energy realism. We've got to put energy affordability and energy security right at the centre of what we're going to achieve.
Used to be a basic fundamental until everyone went insane. Thank you for your sanity, Rupert Darwall, author of Green Tyranny. Very quick word from Benedict Spence on this.
I don't know why you criticise me for being so negative when this is our government. These are the policies that we have to sit with. Why should I be anything other than negative, frankly?
You're one of those young folk trying to make a future. But again, I can understand people going, I'm off to America or somewhere.